Hey guys, tonight we wander back, far, far back, into the warmth of Africa's first mornings, where the horizon seems endless and the earth carries only the faintest trace of footsteps. The sun is low, spilling gold across the plains of the Great Rift Valley. Tall grasses sway in the wind, and herds of antelope lift their heads in perfect stillness, ears flicking toward every sound. You crouch low, heart racing, because out here you wouldn't last long. The lions are faster, the leopards quieter, the snakes quicker with their strike. Even a simple mosquito buzzing at your ear could carry fever enough to undo you. Still, this is where our story begins, on the razor's edge of survival. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you are right now and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step onto soft earth, red and crumbling beneath your feet, scattered with stone outcrops and thorny acacia trees. This is Africa around 3 million years ago, long before cities, before kings, before writing, before even the idea of history. And yet, the first sparks of the human story are already glowing here. You walk carefully, and in the distance, you notice a group of small figures moving upright, though not quite like you. Their arms are still long, their strides awkward, but their eyes are sharp. Australopithecus, one of the earliest human ancestors, testing the balance between trees and open ground. They cling to branches at night, but step into the grass by day, daring to face the unknown with only stone in their hands. Scientists still debate which branch of this tangled family tree leads directly to us. Was it Australopithecus afarensis, the species of the famous skeleton nicknamed Lucy, found in Ethiopia? Or was it another cousin, still hidden in the soil, its bones waiting to tell a different story? You stand at the excavation site, watching paleontologists brush dust from fragile fossils, their whispers full of questions without answers. The truth is uncertain, but what matters is this. Here, in Africa, something new was happening. You walk alongside these early hominins as they forage. A female bends to pick berries, testing each carefully before offering them to a child at her side. A male strikes 2 stones together, the sharp edge slicing through a root. This is not yet mastery, but it is intention. The Oldowan tools, the earliest known, are little more than flakes chipped from larger rocks. But in those chips lies a revolution. A stone that cuts can mean marrow opened, hide sliced, survival extended, and fire. Imagine the awe when it was first tamed. You sit at the edge of a clearing as a lightning strike sets dry grass ablaze. The flames roar, the animals scatter, and smoke curls into the sky. The hominins stay back, fearful but watchful. Days later, embers smolder in a fallen log, and one brave hand reaches out with a stick, pulling the glow into camp. Was this the first firekeeper? No one knows. Some argue fire was mastered nearly 2 million years ago by Homo erectus, another African ancestor with a taller frame and a larger brain. Others say it may have been later, perhaps much later. The uncertainty lingers, like smoke in the air. Still, the image of a circle of figures huddled around a flickering flame is hard to resist. You watch as sparks drift upward, firelight glinting in their eyes, and you realize something profound has begun. Fire means warmth in the cold, protection from predators, cooked food easier to chew. Fire is time reclaimed from the night. And with fire, stories can be told in shadows. The Rift Valley is vast, stretching like a scar across the land. But it is also a cradle. Rivers thread through it, lakes shimmer with fish, and savannas ripple with grazing herds. It is a land of abundance, but also danger. You crouch beside footprints hardened in volcanic ash. The famous Laetoli footprints, made by ancestors walking side by side nearly 4 million years ago. One set belongs to a taller individual, the other smaller, perhaps a child. Their feet press into the ash with unmistakable human shape. Arches, toes aligned, weight balanced on 2 legs. You place your foot over theirs, millennia apart, and feel the shock of recognition. Life here is fragile, but ingenuity grows. Homo habilis, handyman, emerges, carrying sharper stones, crafting tools with more precision. Then Homo erectus strides farther, taller, leaving Africa to roam into Asia and Europe. Yet Africa remains the heart, the fountain from which humanity flows. You stand at the shores of Lake Turkana, the wind sharp against your face, as erectus hunters chase a wounded antelope across the plain. They tire it, mile after mile, persistence hunting until the animal collapses. This is patience turned into power. No claws, no fangs, just endurance and cooperation. A quirky detail. Some scholars suggest early humans may have used ostrich eggs as water containers, carefully hollowed and sealed, carried across the dry lands. Imagine stumbling across one, half buried in sand, decorated with scratches that may have been both art and practical tally marks. Was it a canteen or was it a calendar? The lines blur, the answers elusive. But you smile at the thought of a prehistoric traveler sipping from an egg under the hot sun. Night falls on the plains, and you hear the distant laughter of hyenas, the low rumble of lions. Yet the small band of humans is safe. Their fire glowing, their spears ready, their community tight. They sleep curled against one another, trusting in the circle of light. You close your eyes, listening to the crackle of flames, the chirp of insects, the steady breathing of ancestors who did not yet know they were ancestors. This is the origin, the heartbeat of humanity, pulsing in the soil of Africa. Every step you take forward in time, every stone tool, every spark of fire, every whispered story begins here, in this cradle of red earth and endless sky. The night sky lingers above you, brilliant and unpolluted by city lights. And as dawn comes, the colors of the African savanna unfold like a slow painting. The plains hum with life, elephants trumpeting in the distance, birds rising from the marshes, the hush of wind through acacia branches. Yet what captures your attention is not the roar of lions or the grace of gazelles. It is the quiet persistence of hands shaping stone, sparks crackling against the rhythm of survival. This is the time when early humans, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and their kin, are not merely surviving, but inventing, transforming the raw materials of the earth into tools, into fire, into possibilities. You kneel beside a small clearing where figures gather. One grips a round stone in both hands and strikes it against another. The crack echoes, and a shard flakes off, its edge sharp enough to slice flesh. He grins, holding it up to the morning light. This is an Oldowan tool, simple but revolutionary, just a flake chipped from a larger rock. Yet in that flake is a future of knives, axes, and scalpels. You pick one up, and the edge glints dangerously against your finger. Crude though it looks, it could cut through hide, strip bark, or scrape marrow from bone. Homo habilis is called the handyman for this reason. Their brains are larger than those of Australopithecines, their coordination sharper. They are not simply using nature, they are shaping it. You watch a group of them hunched around the carcass of an antelope left by lions. With their tools, they slice quickly, carving meat free before the hyenas arrive. It is scavenging, yes, but with precision. Their tools buy them time, efficiency, advantage. In the harsh arithmetic of survival, advantage means everything. The rhythm of stones continues. Later species refine these tools into Acheulean hand axes, symmetrical and elegant, shaped like teardrops. You watch Homo erectus, taller and straighter than habilis, knap stone with deliberate strikes, each blow calculated. The axe glitters in the sun, balanced perfectly in the hand. Scholars sometimes marvel at the beauty of these tools, wondering if aesthetics mattered even then. Was symmetry chosen only for efficiency? Or did these early ancestors find beauty in their work? You hold the axe yourself and feel its weight. It could fell a tree branch, butcher an animal, defend against predators. It is more than a tool. It is a companion. Fire, too, enters the story more fully now. You stand near a ring of stones, blackened with ancient charcoal. Scholars still argue about when exactly fire was mastered. Some evidence places it nearly 2 million years ago, others closer to 500,000. But in this moment, as you watch Homo erectus coax sparks from stone, you feel the profound shift. Flames catch in dry grass, smoke curls upward, and suddenly the night is no longer absolute. Fire pushes predators back, offers warmth against the cold, cooks roots and meat until they soften, releasing more nutrition. Around fire, humans learn to sit, to talk, to share. Fire is not just survival, it is society. You sit with them one evening, firelight flickering against their faces. The flames paint shadows on the rocks, and you wonder what thoughts flicker in their minds. Do they tell stories yet? Do they sing? You hear a low hum, rhythmic, almost musical, as one beats a stick against a log. The others join in, clapping, their voices rising into something communal. You smile because in that moment you recognize it. The beginnings of ritual, of music, of art, perhaps not yet sophisticated, but deeply human. The savannah stretches far, but these people wander beyond it. You walk with Homo erectus as they migrate out of Africa, crossing dry lands, rivers and mountains, spreading into Asia and Europe. Their footprints are faint, scattered, but unmistakable. And yet, Africa remains the wellspring. Here, in its varied landscapes, evolution keeps experimenting. Homo heidelbergensis emerges, with brains larger still, bodies powerful, capable of crafting wooden spears hardened in fire. You picture one thrusting a spear into the side of a horse, coordinated with others, hunting not by scavenging, but by skill. A quirky thought surfaces. In South Africa, at a site called Wonderwork Cave, archaeologists found traces of fire more than 1 million years old. Was this deliberate, or was it accidental? Did someone carry embers into that cave, or did a wild blaze sweep through? The uncertainty lingers, as it so often does in deep history. You picture a small group huddled in that cave, their fire casting light against stone walls. Did they watch the shadows dance and imagine spirits? Did they already sense mystery and flame? Over time, the tools grow more sophisticated. Scrapers, blades, points, all shaped with foresight. You watch as one sharpens a flake into a spear tip, then lashes it to a wooden shaft with sinew and resin. The tool is no longer just rock. It is composite, materials combined with intent. This leap feels enormous. You run your fingers along the haft of the spear, and for a moment, it feels modern. And here's another detail. Humans may have begun to decorate objects tens of thousands of years ago, even before cave paintings. Beads made from shells, marked with deliberate holes, have been found in Africa, dating back at least 75,000 years. Imagine someone stringing them together, slipping them over their neck or wrist. Was it beauty, status, or simply joy in adornment? You smile at the thought of an ancestor standing proudly, beads rattling softly, a grin on their face as others admired. The rhythm of life is still harsh. You walk with them across a dry savanna where water is scarce, and you feel your lips crack from thirst. Children cry, elders stumble. Yet somehow, through persistence, cooperation, and innovation, they endure. Persistence hunting remains their gift. You chase an antelope with them under the brutal sun. The animal sprints ahead, but it cannot sweat as you do, cannot cool itself so well. Hours pass, your legs ache, but the antelope tires first, collapses, and the hunt is won. Endurance, not speed, is the weapon. Night falls again, and you sit by another fire. This time, you hear laughter, clear, unmistakable. A child imitates the cry of a hyena, and the others laugh, the sound bubbling into the night. It feels so human, so present, that you forget for a moment how far back you've traveled. You close your eyes, soothed by firelight, by laughter, by the knowledge that in these simple acts, striking stone, guarding flame, sharing food, the foundation of everything to come is being laid. This is the age of tools and fire, of beginnings sharpened into permanence. The earth is still wild, the predators many, but humanity is no longer merely prey. Step by step, spark by spark, edge by edge, the story grows stronger, carrying you forward into the next dawn of history. The firelight of early camps fades as the horizon changes, and when you open your eyes again, you are standing beside the slow current of a river. The air is cooler here, the soil dark with fertility, and reeds whisper in the breeze. This is the Nile, winding its way northward through valleys and deserts, carrying with it not only water, but the future of one of the world's first great civilizations. The sun rises in sheets of gold, glinting off ripples in the water, and you begin to see villages dotted along its banks. Smoke curls from clay hearths, cattle graze in enclosures, and farmers bend low in fields where wheat and barley bend in the wind. The Nile is more than a river. It is a heartbeat. Each year it floods, spilling silt across the banks, making the land fertile in a way the desert around it is not. You kneel and scoop the dark mud in your hands, rich and cool, realizing that without this rhythm, none of what follows would exist. The flood is both predictable and mysterious, tied to rains far south in the highlands of Africa. Farmers carve channels to carry water farther, planting in neat rows, their lives synchronized to the pulse of the river. The villages grow larger, weaving into towns, then into cities. Mud brick walls rise, granaries stand filled with grain, and temples begin to appear. You walk among them, hearing the clang of copper tools, the chatter of markets, the laughter of children chasing one another between reed huts. At night, the stars wheel overhead, and priests begin to mark their movements, learning that the appearance of Sirius predicts the flood. Astronomy, agriculture, and religion intertwine. Soon, kingship emerges. You watch as men and women, dressed in linen, bow before a figure carried on a litter. The king is more than a leader. He is divine, the mediator between earth and sky, human and gods. Narmer, or Menace, as some traditions call him, is said to unite Upper and Lower Egypt, binding the two lands into one kingdom. Scholars still debate whether this unification was a single event or a gradual process. You feel the tension of that uncertainty as you stand at the edge of a ceremonial palette, carved with images of crowns, falcons, and captured enemies. And then the pyramids rise. You stand at Giza as sunlight strikes white limestone blocks, gleaming against a cobalt sky. Workers haul stones with ropes, sleds, and levers, chanting in unison as overseers shout. The air hums with effort, dust, and determination. These are not slaves, as once thought, but laborers fulfilling corvée duties, fed and housed in vast workers' villages. You wander those villages, smelling bread baking, hearing songs by the fireside, sensing pride in their contribution. The pyramid is more than a tomb. It is a symbol, a mountain carved by hands, a ladder between earth and eternity. You step inside one of these tombs, torchlight flickering across walls painted with scenes of daily life. Hunting, fishing, farming, banquets. The colors are still vibrant. Blue lotus blossoms, green reeds, red ochre for skin. You trace a figure rowing a boat, the water filled with fish, and realize this was not just art, but belief. Egyptians saw life and afterlife as reflections. The tomb, a home for eternity. Quirky details catch your eye. Cats, for example, are everywhere. Curled at women's feet, perched on chairs, even painted larger than humans in some scenes. Revered for their hunting skills and their grace, cats become sacred, linked with the goddess Bastet. You laugh softly, thinking how little has changed. Cats still rule households, still demand reverence, though today their temples are our couches. The Nile flows on, and you follow it southward into Nubia. Here the landscape shifts, rockier, harsher, with cataracts breaking the river into rapids. Yet along its banks, kingdoms rise. Kush, with its rich mines of gold, rivals its northern neighbor. You wander through Kerma, its great mud brick structures standing proud. Cattle skulls lining ceremonial avenues. The Nubians are traders, warriors, builders. Their culture distinct yet deeply connected to Egypt's. At times, Egypt rules Nubia, mining its wealth, drafting its soldiers. At other times, the balance shifts, and Nubian kings march northward, seizing the throne of Egypt itself. The Black Pharaohs of the 25th dynasty wear crowns of both lands, their statues massive, their features proud. You stand at Jebel Barkal, gazing at temples cut into stone, feeling the power of a kingdom often overshadowed in history, yet essential to the tale of Africa. And beyond Egypt and Nubia, farther into the desert, caravans form. You walk alongside them, the sand hot beneath your feet, as camels sway under loads of salt, ivory, and gold. The Sahara is not always desert. Sometimes, thousands of years earlier, it was green, dotted with lakes where fish swam and hippos wallowed. Petroglyphs etched into rocks show giraffes, cattle, even boats, reminders of a time when the desert was alive. Historians still argue how quickly the Sahara dried, how people adapted, whether migration southward seeded other civilizations. You trace those carvings with your fingers, imagining the lost lakes shimmering under a forgotten sun. The story of Egypt, Nubia, and the Sahara is not just one of monuments and kings, but of daily life. You kneel in a field, watching a farmer press seed into soil, then look up at a scribe tallying grain on a clay tablet. The farmer's calloused hands, the scribe's careful strokes, both essential, both part of a system larger than themselves. You sip beer brewed from barley, thick and sweet, the drink of workers and nobles alike. You hear music from flutes, harps, and sistrums, their notes drifting across the water. Night falls again, and you sit at the river's edge, the pyramid silhouettes against the stars. The air is cool, the reeds whisper, and you close your eyes, hearing the slow current of the Nile. It feels eternal, unchanging. Though you know dynasties will rise and fall, temples crumble, and sands will bury once mighty cities. But for this moment, the Nile flows steady, carrying the dreams of countless generations into the endless sea. The Nile fades from your vision, its wide waters slipping northward into memory, and you feel yourself drawn farther south, into lands where the desert grows harsher, the stones sharper, and the river breaks into cataracts. Here the Nile narrows and races, foaming between cliffs, and yet people thrive along its banks. You are walking into Nubia, into the kingdoms that rose and fell just beyond the shadow of Egypt. Kingdoms that built pyramids of their own, carved temples from stone, and dared to rule the north as conquerors. The sun feels hotter here, the light harsher against the stone. The cliffs loom, painted orange at dusk, and villages cluster along the water. You hear the clang of copper smelting, the bleating of goats, and the low chant of herders driving cattle. This is Kerma, one of the earliest great Nubian cities, flourishing around 2500 BCE. Its mud brick walls rise like mountains, thick and imposing, surrounding a town full of life. You walk through its avenues, where traders unload goods from across the continent. Ivory tusks, ostrich feathers, hardwoods, and above all, gold. Nubia's wealth gleams in every market stall, every ornament, every necklace that jingles on the necks of women walking past. Egyptians called this land Ta Seti, the land of the bow, because Nubian archers were legendary. You pause to watch a group practicing on the edge of the city, their arrows striking targets with deadly precision. Later, they will march in foreign armies, serving as mercenaries, feared even by their Egyptian employers. The bow is not just a weapon here, it is an identity. You wander farther and see Kerma's great Defufa, massive mud brick temples that rise against the sky. Inside, the air is cool, shaded, and painted with images of gods whose names we no longer know. The walls whisper of ceremonies now lost, chants that once echoed beneath the vaulted ceilings. Scholars still debate the exact rituals performed here. Was it a sun cult, a fertility rite, or something entirely different? The mystery lingers, carved into brick, waiting for an answer that may never come. Time moves forward, and the balance of power shifts. Egypt, jealous of Nubia's wealth, pushes southward. Armies march across the desert. Temples are destroyed. Fortresses rise along the Nile. For centuries, Egypt dominates Nubia, extracting gold, enslaving its people, absorbing its soldiers. You stand in the ruins of one of those fortresses, the stones hot beneath your hands, and feel the weight of empire pressing down. Yet Nubia does not vanish. It adapts, resists, waits. Centuries later, the Kushite kingdom rises in the city of Napata. The kings of Kush adopt Egyptian gods, build temples, and even construct pyramids, smaller, steeper, clustered in rows across the desert sands. You climb one of these pyramids, its stones warm beneath your fingers, and look out across dozens of others, their tips piercing the horizon. It feels familiar, like Giza, yet distinctly different. Leaner, sharper, more numerous. The Kushites take Egypt's symbols and remake them in their own image. Then comes a moment of reversal. Around 747 BCE, Kushite kings march northward and seize the Egyptian throne. You watch as Paye, the Kushite pharaoh, proclaims himself ruler of both Upper and Lower Egypt. The Black Pharaohs of the 25th dynasty reign, their statues massive, their features unmistakably Nubian, their power stretching from the Mediterranean to the heart of Africa. For a time, they revive old traditions, restoring temples, reasserting divine kingship. They are conquerors, but also preservers. You step into a temple at Jebel Barkal, sacred mountain of the Kushites. The cliff itself seems carved by the gods, and at its base, columns rise, hieroglyphs etched deep into stone. Priests chant, incense drifts, and the statues of Amun and other gods stand watch. The blending of cultures here is seamless. Egyptian deities give a Nubian reverence, Nile traditions transplanted farther south, scholars still argue. Was this true Egyptianization? Or was it a deliberate political performance? Were the Kushite kings pious believers? Or were they simply using Egypt's gods as symbols of legitimacy? The line blurs, as it so often does in history, but power is never eternal. The Assyrians march against Kushite Egypt, their armies relentless, their iron weapons sharper. The Kushites are driven south again, back to Nubia, where they rebuild anew. The capital shifts to Meroe, farther into the savannah, where the rains are heavier, the cattle thicker, and the iron forges burn hot. You walk into Meroe and hear the clang of hammers. The city hums with industry, its furnaces roaring as iron is smelted on a scale unseen before. Here, pyramids continue to rise, hundreds of them, dotting the desert like teeth. But the art shifts. Hieroglyphs mingle with Meroitic script, a writing system we still cannot fully read. You run your hands over its signs, curves and loops, unlike Egyptian glyphs. And you feel frustration. What secrets are hidden here? Prayers, poems, laws. The words remain silent, scholars still puzzling, their meaning tantalizing but elusive. Life in Meroe is vibrant. Queens rule alongside kings, sometimes more powerfully than them. The Kandakes, queen mothers, lead armies, negotiate treaties, command respect. You picture Amanirenas, one such Kandake, facing Roman invaders after Egypt falls under their control. She loses an eye in battle but continues to fight, leading her people with unshakable will. When peace is negotiated, Meroe remains free, unbroken. You smile at her statue, the scarred face carved with quiet dignity. A reminder that history remembers strength in many forms. Trade thrives here as well. From Meroe, caravans stretch across deserts, carrying ivory, gold, ostrich feathers, and slaves. From the Red Sea, ships bring goods from Arabia, India, even China. You stand in the market, smelling spices unfamiliar to the land, hearing tongues from far away. Africa is not isolated. It is connected, stitched into the fabric of the ancient world. Still, the sands creep in, and centuries later, Meroe falters. Desertification, shifting trade routes, and invasions wear it down. The city empties, its pyramids crumbling beneath relentless wind. You walk through the ruins, the silence broken only by birds wheeling overhead. The names of kings and queens fade, their scripts unread, their gods forgotten. Yet their stones remain, sharp against the desert sky, a reminder that history here is not erased, but layered, waiting to be uncovered. You turn from Nubia's pyramids and glance once more at the Nile, flowing steady, eternal. Egypt may have claimed the headlines of history, but Nubia, Kush, and Meroe stand tall in the background, empires of their own, innovators, conquerors, and storytellers. As you walk southward, the river widens again, and the air grows moist with promise. Africa's history does not stop here. It branches outward, across deserts and seas, into kingdoms and cities that will rise with their own brilliance. For now, you pause, the desert sun pressing against your back, and close your eyes. You hear the distant clang of iron, the whisper of reeds by the Nile, and the chant of priests echoing in stone temples. The memory of Nubia lingers, proud and unbowed, carrying you forward into the next great caravan of history. The desert wind curls around you as the memory of Meroe's pyramids fades. The stones sink back into sand, and the Nile's waters recede from your ears until only the hiss of wind remains. You blink, and when you open your eyes, the horizon is endless. Dunes roll like waves, ochre and gold under a pitiless sun. You are standing on the edge of the Sahara, that vast desert so often imagined as eternal. Yet here's a secret. The Sahara was not always desert. Long ago, its face was very different. Green and alive, dotted with lakes, trees, and grazing herds. You walk across cracked ground and suddenly stumble upon a carving etched into stone. Giraffes, hippos, cattle, hunters with bows. Petroglyphs from thousands of years ago. Reminders that people lived here, hunted here, prayed here. You kneel, tracing your fingers across the grooves, feeling the stories of a lost landscape. Historians still debate exactly when the Sahara dried into desert, whether it was gradual or punctuated by sudden shifts. Some suggest climate cycles tied to Earth's tilt, others point to human herding practices altering the fragile ecosystem. The truth lingers in uncertainty, but the evidence is here. The Sahara was once green. Imagine walking through it then. You follow a herd of long-horned cattle down to a wide lake, its waters reflecting clouds that drift lazily above. Families camp along the shore, their pots baking in the sun, their children playing in the shallows. They carve their animals into stone as offerings, perhaps to gods of water, perhaps to ancestors, perhaps simply because beauty begged to be recorded. The sounds of insects buzz, frogs croak, and the air is alive in a way the modern desert hides. You pause, closing your eyes, listening to echoes of life swallowed by sand. But time marches, and the rains fade. The lakes shrink, the grasses dry, the herds vanish, and people move. You watch as families gather their belongings, pressing forward toward more fertile lands, south into the Sahel, east toward the Nile, west toward oases. Migration becomes survival. And as the Sahara becomes a barrier, a wall of sand dividing north from south, something remarkable happens. People do not simply avoid it. They learn to cross it. You are with one of the first caravans. The sun blazes, your lips crack, your skin stings, and you wonder, how could anyone survive this? Then you notice the animals. Camels, their broad feet spreading over sand, their humps storing fat, their bodies enduring what no horse could. The camel is the ship of the desert, and with it, people carve highways across the Sahara. Salt, ivory, gold, slaves, spices, all carried on the sway of camelbacks, through heat that seems unbearable. At an oasis, you pause. Palms rise against the sky, water shimmers in shallow pools, and the smell of dates fills the air. Traders rest here, their camels kneeling, goods piled in heaps, blocks of salt like white stone, sacks of grain, jars of honey, and gleaming nuggets of gold. You sip from the cool water and let the breeze brush against your face, marveling at how such fragile places sustain entire empires. Salt becomes more precious than gold in some regions. You lift a block of it, heavy in your hands, and think about how essential it is. Not just for flavor, but for life, for preserving meat, for survival in lands where sweat drains the body of salt faster than it can be replaced. A strange irony. Deserts built on sand are also built on salt, and from salt, wealth flows. The Sahara, once a wall, becomes a bridge. From North Africa, Berber traders bring goods southward, and from West Africa, caravans carry gold northward. You walk with them, nights lit by stars so sharp they cut the sky, days filled with heat that steals your breath. Drums beat at campfires, stories are traded alongside goods, and cultures mingle. A quirky story drifts your way. Some travelers swear they saw entire lost cities swallowed by sand, places with walls of stone and markets bustling before dunes erased them. Were these exaggerations of mirages or memories of real settlements? Scholars debate, but the romance of lost Sahara cities lingers, shimmering like heat haze. Crossing the desert, you begin to sense how it shaped history. It isolates, but also connects. It divides, but also unites. Empires will rise because of its trade routes. Ghana, Mali, Songhai. Kingdoms whose wealth will rest on caravans trudging through the silence of endless dunes. As you rest at another oasis, night deepens and voices rise. Traders from the Maghreb recite verses of the Quran. West Africans tell stories of ancestors. Music spills from stringed instruments that hum like the wind. The Sahara is not empty. It is alive with memory, commerce, and culture. You sleep under the stars, the sand cool beneath you, and dream of the journeys yet to come. For from this desert's vast emptiness, great cities will shine, cities of scholars, libraries, and kings weighed down with gold. But for now, you simply breathe with the rhythm of caravans, feeling the desert's pulse, both harsh and tender, carrying you onward to Africa's golden empires. The desert caravan fades behind you, its camels swaying away into a horizon of dunes. And now the landscape shifts once more. You climb into highlands where air thins and the heat softens, into valleys carved by rivers that run clear and fast, through forests of juniper and fields where barley bends in the wind. The soil here is dark, volcanic, fertile. The mountains jagged, their peaks touching clouds. You are in the Horn of Africa, in the heart of what will become Ethiopia, where kingdoms grow in stone and legend lingers in every shadow. The land smells of frankincense and myrrh, resin dripping from trees in sticky tears that merchants gather and carry across seas. You wander through Aksum, a city rising in the 1st century CE, its markets bustling, its air filled with the shouts of traders calling in Ge'ez, Greek, and Arabic alike. Here, Africa is tied to the wider world. Ivory tusks carved from elephants march northward, gold and spices glint in the hands of merchants, and in return come silks, glass, and wine. The Red Sea is a highway, and Aksum is its beating heart. The monuments astonish you. Rising above the city are obelisks, tall stone stelae carved from single pieces of granite, some reaching over 30 meters in height. Their faces are etched with windows and doors, mimicking palaces of the living, though these are graves for the dead. You tilt your head back until your neck aches, staring at one still standing, its surface smooth despite centuries of sun. How these stones were carved, transported, and raised is still debated. Scholars propose sledges, ropes, sheer manpower, but none can say with certainty how such feats were achieved. You press your hand to the cool granite and feel the mystery in its weight. You walk into a church, its incense sweet, its walls echoing with chant. Christianity has come to Aksum in the 4th century CE, carried perhaps by merchants, perhaps by missionaries. King Ezana, the ruler of Aksum, proclaims the new faith, his inscriptions carved into stone in multiple languages, Ge'ez, Sabaean, Greek, announcing that this kingdom is Christian. Coins struck in gold carry the cross, among the first in the world to do so. You sit in the back of the church and listen to the chant in Ge'ez, a language still sung in liturgy today, its cadences haunting and unbroken across centuries. Quirky stories whisper around you. Some traditions claim that the Ark of the Covenant, the chest of stone tablets from Moses himself, rests in Ethiopia, housed in a chapel in Aksum. You cannot see it, for only one guardian priest is allowed. But pilgrims bow outside the chapel walls, their foreheads pressed to the stone. Is it true? Scholars shake their heads. No evidence confirms it. Yet the story persists, woven into Ethiopia's identity. A reminder that sometimes faith shapes history more strongly than fact. Farther south, you travel to Lalibela, where churches are not built upward but downward, carved directly into living rock. You descend steps cut into the ground, and suddenly a cross-shaped church rises from the earth, its walls and roof carved from one block of stone. Inside, the air is cool. candles flicker. Priests in white robes sway to the rhythm of drums. 11 such churches stand here, connected by tunnels, their roofs flush with the ground above. Some say angels helped build them in a single night. Others point to the patient chisels of thousands of workers. Scholars still argue the exact dates and patrons. But as you walk the dark corridors, you feel the timelessness of devotion carved in silence. The Highlands are not only about faith, they are about kingship. You hear the echo of drums and horns as warriors gather in the court of a Solomonic king. They claim descent from the union of King Solomon of Israel and the Queen of Sheba, whose story lingers in Ethiopian lore. The queen traveled to Jerusalem, met Solomon, and returned with a son, Menelik, who brought the Ark of the Covenant back to Ethiopia. Is it myth? Is it memory? No one knows, but the story is told with such conviction that it shapes dynasties, legitimizes thrones, and fills chronicles. The markets of Aksum bustle with trade. You stroll past baskets of coffee beans, their fragrance sharp and bitter. Coffee, according to legend, was discovered here when a shepherd noticed his goats dancing with energy after eating red berries. Tried them himself and felt the same spark. Whether the story is true or not, the beans spread. First as a drink in monasteries to keep monks awake in prayer, then across the Islamic world, then eventually the globe. You sip a bitter cup in the Highlands, the steam curling against your face, and marvel at how a local berry reshaped global mornings. The Red Sea winds carry voices from far beyond. You meet Arab traders who bring tales from Mecca, Roman sailors who sail down the African coast, Indian merchants who exchange spices and silk. Aksum is no isolated kingdom. It is global, tied by ships and roads, its coins found as far as India. You listen to the chatter, the mix of languages, and you feel the hum of a connected world. Yet even empires wane. Aksum declines after centuries of prosperity, its trade routes shifting, its fields exhausted, its forests cut for timber. Islam spreads across the Red Sea, reshaping trade and politics. Aksum retreats into the Highlands, Christianity preserved in monasteries clinging to cliffs, their manuscripts illuminated with saints painted in bright, staring eyes. You climb a cliff path, dizzy with height, until you enter one of these monasteries. Inside, monks chant by lamplight, their voices steady, their devotion unbroken. Here, amid mountains, faith becomes fortress, preserving memory through centuries of change. Historians debate how far Aksum's reach once spread. Some argue it conquered parts of Arabia, its inscriptions boasting of victories. Others suggest its empire was more symbolic, influence carried by trade and tribute rather than armies. You stand at the port of Adulis, now long vanished beneath sand, and imagine ships crowding its harbors, sails white against the horizon. The uncertainty hums, like waves against forgotten shores. And yet, Ethiopia endures. While other kingdoms vanish, its line of rulers stretches, its faith survives, its traditions persist. You walk among farmers plowing fields with oxen, priests carrying crosses of gold, scribes illuminating manuscripts. Time moves forward, but the pulse remains steady. The Highlands hum with continuity, an unbroken thread weaving past to present. As night falls, you sit on a mountain ridge, the air cool, the stars sharp above. You hear drums in the valley, smell the smoke of hearth fires, taste the bitterness of coffee on your tongue. The land around you feels timeless, ancient yet alive, a bridge between myth and history. You close your eyes and listen. The chant of monks, the whisper of wind through juniper, the echo of obelisks that still rise against the sky. This is Ethiopia, carved in stone and legend, waiting to carry you onward to the golden empires of the West. The cool breezes of the Ethiopian Highlands fade behind you, and in their place the air grows hotter, heavier, and full of the smell of dust and earth. You move westward, across savanna and Sahel, where grasses stretch to the horizon and rivers snake lazily through the land. Drums beat in the distance, a rhythm that seems to echo the heartbeat of the continent itself. You are entering West Africa, into the lands of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. Empires built on gold, stories, and memory. The ground beneath your feet sparkles with flecks of metal, golden dust shining against red soil. Here lies the source of West Africa's wealth. Gold carried from rivers and forests, traded northward through caravans to the Mediterranean world. You walk into a village where miners sift river sand with wooden bowls, their hands steady as sunlight catches on grains of yellow. Gold here is so abundant that later Arab writers will say nuggets were picked up like stones. Whether exaggeration or not, the wealth is undeniable. And from this wealth rise kingdoms that dazzle travelers for centuries. First comes Ghana, not the modern nation, but the ancient empire that flourished between the 8th and 11th centuries. You step into the capital of Kumbi Saleh, where two towns stand side by side, one for the king and his court, the other for Muslim traders and scholars. The king's court astonishes you. He sits on a platform draped with gold. Behind him, horses with golden bridles. At his feet, dogs with golden collars. Drummers beat rhythms, courtiers clap, and the air glitters with wealth. Was this truly how it looked? Historians debate, since accounts come mainly from travelers like al-Bakri, who may have mixed fact with awe. Yet, as you watch the spectacle unfold, it feels real enough. Gold woven into power, power shining in ritual. You wander through the market, where salt is sold in blocks as large as a man's arm. Caravans bring it from the Sahara, their camels groaning under the weight. Salt, as precious as gold, ensures survival, preserving meat, flavoring food, sustaining bodies under a relentless sun. The balance between salt and gold creates a rhythm of trade that sustains empires. You sip water offered by a trader and feel grains of salt dissolve on your tongue. A reminder that wealth is not always glittering, but sometimes simply vital. Time moves forward, and Ghana declines, but Mali rises in its place. You walk into Niani, capital of Mali, where the court hums with music and the smell of roasted meat drifts through the air. Here sits Mansa Musa, perhaps the most famous African king, whose pilgrimage to Mecca in the 14th century will stun the world. You join his caravan as it departs, and the scale is overwhelming. Thousands of attendants, hundreds of camels laden with gold, banners fluttering, drums thundering. When he reaches Cairo, he gives so much gold that its value collapses for years. You imagine the astonishment of merchants counting coins, the whisper of his name traveling across deserts, seas, and continents. But wealth is not only in gold, it is in knowledge. You walk into Timbuktu, the city of scholars, where the desert meets the river. Here, libraries glow with lamplight, manuscripts stacked in dusty corners, their pages filled with philosophy, astronomy, poetry, law. Students gather in courtyards, debating under the stars, their voices rising like birdsong. You lean over a manuscript, its ink still crisp, its calligraphy elegant, and realize you are touching a memory preserved against time. Scholars estimate that hundreds of thousands of such manuscripts existed, covering every subject imaginable. Some still remain, hidden in chests, guarded by families, reminders that West Africa's legacy is not just in gold, but in wisdom. Quirky tales emerge in these cities. Some say in Timbuktu, a traveler could buy a book more easily than a loaf of bread. Was that exaggeration? Perhaps. But the image lingers. Caravans of camels bringing salt and gold, while another trade, of ideas, spreads even farther. The city hums with both commerce and thought, its streets alive with debate. You wander along the Niger River, wide and slow, its waters reflecting the sky. Boats carved from single trees glide past, their sails catching the wind. Fishermen sing as they haul nets, women pound millet in wooden mortars, children chase each other along the bank. The river is not only lifeline, but stage, a place where daily life flows seamlessly with the grandeur of empire. The Songhai Empire rises next, its capital Gao gleaming with wealth, its army vast, its reach stretching farther than any before in West Africa. You watch soldiers drilling, spears glinting, horses stamping, their discipline remarkable. Askia Muhammad, the great ruler, organizes provinces, codifies laws, encourages learning. You step into his court, where emissaries from distant lands kneel, their gifts piled high. It feels like the world has come to West Africa's doorstep. Yet even here, uncertainty lingers. The chronicles that describe these empires, written by travelers, merchants, later scholars, blend fact with flourish. Did Ghana truly field an army of 200,000 men, as some accounts claim? Scholars doubt it. But the numbers themselves hint at the impression these kingdoms left on outsiders. You smile at the thought. History often remembers not the precise count, but the awe inspired. You sit with a griot, a storyteller, beneath a baobab tree. His kora, a stringed instrument, hums as he plucks it, and his voice rises in song. He recounts the epic of Sundiata, the Lion King of Mali, born weak but destined to unite his people, triumphing over enemies with courage and wit. The griot's voice is rich, his gestures sweeping, and children lean in, eyes wide. This is history not written in books, but carried in memory, passed through generations in song and story. You close your eyes, letting the melody weave around you, feeling the weight of memory stretch back centuries. Night falls on the savannah, and you see fires glowing in distant villages, hear drums rolling like thunder across the land. The stars wheel above, the same stars that guided caravans, marked seasons, and inspired poets. You breathe in the scent of wood smoke and earth. And you realize that these empires, though long gone, still hum in the air. Their wealth is gone, their armies vanished, but their stories remain, shimmering like gold dust in red soil. The road leads onward, to cities of stone in the south, to coral towns along the coast, to forests where art gleams in bronze and ivory. But for now, you rest under the wide African sky, listening to the griot's song fade into silence, carrying with it the echo of kings who once shone like the sun. The griot's song fades with the crackle of firewood, and as you open your eyes again, the world has shifted. The desert winds fall silent, the savannas recede, and before you lies a city of mud brick and timber, perched along a bend in the Great Niger River. Boats line the shore, manuscripts wrapped in cloth are carried in careful hands, and minarets rise like sentinels against a burning sky. You have arrived in Timbuktu, legendary, half-dreamed, often misunderstood, but very real in its brilliance. The first thing you notice is the scent. Parchment, leather bindings, ink, and dust, mingled with the smell of spices drifting from the market. You step into a narrow street where men in flowing robes argue softly about points of law, their hands fluttering with graceful gestures. The city hums not with armies or caravans, though both are present, but with ideas. This is a place where knowledge is traded with as much fervor as salt or gold. You duck into a library. The room is dim, its walls lined with shelves stacked high with manuscripts. Some are wrapped in leather, others in cloth, their pages glimmering faintly with faded gold leaf. A scholar sits cross-legged, copying a text by lamplight, his reed pen scratching softly. He pauses to blow gently on the ink, then turns the page. You lean closer and catch glimpses of words. Astronomy, medicine, poetry, law, these are not just prayers or chronicles. They are works of science and philosophy, part of a global conversation. Historians estimate that Timbuktu once housed hundreds of thousands of such manuscripts, perhaps even more, covering subjects from algebra to herbal remedies to love poetry. Families guarded them jealously, passing them down as heirlooms. You think of how fragile paper can be, how easily fire or time could erase it all. And yet, here it survives, whispered between generations. A quirky detail. Some manuscripts contain doodles, simple drawings of animals or hands, perhaps the absent-minded sketches of students bored in lectures centuries ago. You smile, realizing that even in the grand halls of learning, humanity has always had the impulse to scribble in margins. You wander next to the Sankore Mosque, not only a place of worship, but a university. The mosque's mud-brick walls curve gracefully, its minaret studded with wooden beams jutting out like steps against the sky. Inside, the air is cool, shadows deep, voices low. Students gather around a teacher, their slates on their knees, chalk dust on their fingers. The teacher recites, the students repeat, their voices rising in a chant that is both prayer and lesson. Subjects range from Quranic study to law, history, mathematics, and astronomy. At night, the city quiets, and yet debates continue in courtyards lit by lanterns. You sit with a group of scholars under the stars, and one points upward, tracing the arc of a constellation. They discuss how to calculate the start of Ramadan, how to align calendars, how to track the movements of planets. Their knowledge is not isolated. It draws from the Islamic world, from Greek texts translated into Arabic, from Indian mathematics. Timbuktu is a crossroads, and you can feel the threads of a global web vibrating here. Still, the city is not only about books. In the market, you walk among stalls heavy with salt slabs stacked like bricks, their edges glittering in the sun. Gold dust shimmers in small gourds. Cloth dyed with indigo hangs in rich folds. Merchants haggle in a dozen languages: Songhai, Arabic, Berber, even echoes of Portuguese. You smell roasted meat, hear the bleat of goats, see camels kneeling as their loads are unpacked. Timbuktu is alive with commerce, its wealth feeding the libraries and mosques that make it legendary. Travelers from far away write of Timbuktu with awe, though sometimes with exaggeration. One account insists the streets were paved with gold, a myth, of course, but one born of the city's reputation for wealth. Another marvels at the justice of its courts, the order of its markets. Others, more skeptical, describe it as dusty and unimpressive, its greatness exaggerated by rumor. You stand between these accounts, the truth shimmering like a mirage. Timbuktu is neither mythical golden paradise nor mere desert town. It is both humble and extraordinary. A city of contradictions where wisdom shines brighter than gold. Scholars still argue about the extent of Timbuktu's influence. Was it a true intellectual capital equal to Cairo or Baghdad? Or was it a regional hub inflated by later imagination? The answer, perhaps, lies in the manuscripts themselves. Many remain untranslated, hidden in trunks and storerooms. What secrets they hold, forgotten discoveries, unique philosophies, remains uncertain, a mystery still unfolding. You step into another mosque, Jingwereber, its mud plaster warm beneath your fingers. Built in the 14th century, tradition says it was commissioned by Mansa Musa himself on his return from pilgrimage. You picture him here, the Golden King, standing in prayer, his wealth echoing in the walls. Outside, the city still murmurs with life. But inside, the air is still, filled only with whispers of devotion. And yet, Timbuktu is not alone. Across the Sahel, other cities hum with similar rhythms. Gao, Djenné, Kano. You travel to Djenné, where the great mosque rises like a sandcastle made permanent, its walls of mud bricks studded with palm beams. On market day, the square teems with traders, their goods spread in bright heaps, spices, cloth, pottery, baskets. The mosque towers over it all, its walls replastered each year by the community, the ritual itself a binding of people to place. In Kano, far to the east, you walk among walls of red clay that stretch for kilometers, enclosing a city rich in trade, art, and learning. The dye pits bubble with indigo, men stomping cloth until it gleams deep blue. Artisans shape leather, carve wood, forge iron. Everywhere, the hum of craft and trade resonates. Quirky details surface again. Some travelers note that in Timbuktu, books were sometimes worth more than gold. Imagine that. Caravans bringing salt, gold, and slaves, but also books. Pages more precious than coins. It feels almost like magic, this reverence for knowledge. But history is not always gentle. You hear the distant thunder of armies, the shifting of power as empires rise and fall. Timbuktu flourishes under Mali, then Songhai. But eventually, it is conquered by Morocco in the late 16th century. Its libraries scattered, its scholars silenced. You walk among the ruins, manuscripts hidden away, some burned, others smuggled into safekeeping. The silence is heavy, yet the memory persists. Timbuktu survives in myth and in manuscripts still preserved in hidden trunks today. Night falls once more, and you sit by the Niger, its waters gleaming under the moon. You hear faint echoes of chants from mosques, laughter from markets winding down, the rustle of palm leaves in the breeze. You close your eyes, feeling the weight of learning, the glow of manuscripts, the hum of a city built on salt, gold, and wisdom. Timbuktu lingers, half legend, half history, but entirely unforgettable. The slow bend of the Niger drifts from memory, its manuscripts tucked away in silence. And now you hear another rhythm. The crash of waves, the call of gulls, the hiss of monsoon winds against wooden sails. The scent is different here. Salt spray, seaweed drying on rocks, and the smoky tang of fish roasting in coastal markets. You have reached the Swahili coast, where Africa leans out toward the Indian Ocean, and where coral stone cities once shone like jewels along turquoise waters. The air is heavy with humidity, and the palms sway above you as you step onto narrow streets paved with coral blocks. The walls rise high on either side, pierced with carved wooden doors so intricate that each one seems like a story in itself. Geometric spirals, flowers, inscriptions in Arabic curling across lintels. You run your hand along the warm wood, its surface polished smooth by centuries of touch. This is Kilwa, one of the greatest of the Swahili city-states, flourishing between the 13th and 16th centuries. You wander through its markets, where traders from Arabia, Persia, India, and even China mingle with African merchants. The stalls are piled high, ivory tusks gleaming in the sun, tortoise shells stacked like shields, spices spilling fragrance into the air. You hear voices in Kiswahili, the language born of blending, Bantu roots shaped by Arabic words, a tongue of trade and culture that still sings across East Africa today. At the harbor, dhows rock gently, their triangular sails furled against the breeze. These are the vessels of monsoon trade, timing their journeys with the seasonal winds. Northward in one half of the year, southward in the other. You step onto one, its deck rough beneath your feet, and smell the mingling cargo. Coconuts, dried fish, bundles of silk, sacks of pepper. The sea itself becomes a road, linking Africa not only to Arabia and India, but to places as distant as China. A quirky detail. The great Chinese admiral Zheng He is said to have visited the Swahili coast in the early 15th century, his massive treasure ships dwarfing the dhows in harbor. Did he truly step ashore at Malindi or Mogadishu? Historians debate. Some chronicles describe it, others are silent. Yet porcelain shards from China lie in the sands here, fragments of bowls once used in local households. Even if Zheng He's fleet never docked, Chinese goods certainly did, carried by the great currents of trade. You step into the ruins of the great Mosque of Kilwa, its coral stone arches still proud against the sky. Inside, shafts of sunlight fall on prayer niches, worn smooth by centuries of devotion. You kneel on the cool floor, hearing echoes of voices raised in Quranic chant, the rhythm of faith mingling with the rhythm of commerce. Islam spread here, not by conquest, but by trade. Carried in the prayers of merchants and the quiet devotion of sailors, mosques rose in every coastal town, their minarets guiding ships home as much as calling the faithful to prayer. The architecture itself is astonishing. In Lamu and Zanzibar, houses rise in graceful proportions, their plastered walls gleaming white against the sea. Balconies carved from mangrove wood jut into narrow alleys, where shadows pool and voices echo. Women in bright kangas carry baskets of spices, their laughter ringing, while children dart between shadows, chasing each other into the market. You smell cinnamon, cloves, cardamom, spices that once traveled across oceans, their value measured in silver and gold. The Swahili cities are not isolated towns, but nodes in a chain. From Mogadishu in the north to Sofala in the south, hundreds of miles of coastline hum with trade. You walk along the beach at Mombasa, where fishermen mend nets while merchants argue over ivory prices. Farther south at Sofala, gold from the hinterlands pours in, drawn from rivers and mines deep inland. That gold makes its way north to Kilwa, then across the sea to Arabia and India, gilding mosques, palaces, and thrones. You pause by a storyteller's circle at dusk. A man plucks at an oud, his voice rising in a song about sailors lost at sea, about lovers waiting on the shore, about ships returning with cargoes of wonder. Children listen wide-eyed, while elders nod, remembering journeys of their own. The Indian Ocean is not just a route of goods. It is a route of stories, of ideas, of people. You smile, thinking how the sea carries not only wealth, but imagination. Still, these cities are fragile. When Portuguese ships appear in the late 15th century, cannon booming, the balance shifts. You watch from the harbor as Vasco da Gama's fleet sails in, their sails stiff against the wind, their guns firing into coral walls. Kilwa burns, Mombasa is raided, Sofala is seized. The Portuguese seek not only trade but control, carving fortresses along the coast. The Swahili towns resist, rebuild, adapt, but their golden age wanes. You walk among ruins, arches open to sky, walls crumbling, yet even in ruin they hold beauty. Historians still argue about the Swahili coast's identity. Were these city-states African at heart, or Arab, or something blended beyond categories? The answer lies in the language, in the people themselves. Kiswahili holds both African roots and Arabic grace. The people carry African lineages and Islamic faith. The cities are African and oceanic, both rooted and global. You walk the alleys, hearing Kiswahili greetings, smelling spices, and you realize identity here is not one or the other. It is both, seamlessly. At night, you sit by the sea. The waves crash steady, the stars blaze above. The same stars that guided dhows for centuries. You hear the creak of sails, the murmur of prayers, the laughter of markets. The Swahili coast hums with memory, its coral walls glowing faintly in moonlight. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you drift with the monsoon winds, carried across the ocean on the endless rhythm of trade. The salt wind of the Indian Ocean slips away as you move inland, through rolling savannas where grass whispers against your legs, past baobab trees that rise like ancient guardians, their branches gnarled like hands reaching for the sky. The air is drier here, the land vast and open, but in the distance you see something impossible. Walls of stone rising from the earth, without mortar, without binding, yet standing firm against centuries. You have arrived at Great Zimbabwe. The name itself means House of Stone, and as you approach, you understand why. The enclosures are massive, some walls soaring more than 10 meters high, their stones carefully stacked in graceful curves. You run your hand along the surface. Smooth, cool granite blocks, each one placed with precision, as if the builders had whispered to the stones and convinced them to stay together. There is no mortar, no glue, only gravity and craftsmanship. The result is astonishing. Structures that rise and bend with the landscape, blending human intent with natural form. You walk through the great enclosure, its walls curling like a serpent across the hillside. Inside, the air is cooler, the space wide. A conical tower rises within, solid and enigmatic. What was its purpose? Historians debate. Some say it stored grain, a symbol of prosperity. Others argue it was ritual, perhaps a sign of kingship, fertility, or unity. The tower remains silent, its true purpose a mystery. But its presence commands you. Standing beside it, you feel small, as though you are in the company of something sacred. Quirky details emerge as you wander. Soapstone birds once perched on pillars here, carved with elegant curves, part eagle, part human, their forms stylized and powerful. 8 of these birds survive, now symbols of Zimbabwe itself. Were they totems of kings, guardians of ancestors? Historians cannot say with certainty, but their gaze feels timeless, watching over the city even as centuries pass. You climb the hill complex, perched on rocky slopes overlooking the valley. Here, leaders may have lived, their stone houses commanding views of the savannah. You sit on a boulder, the wind rushing past, and imagine the bustle below centuries ago. Herds of cattle lowing, smoke rising from hearths, the clang of metal from forges. At its height, perhaps 20,000 people lived here. A city thriving between the 11th and 15th centuries, linked to trade that stretched across continents. Trade is everywhere in the ruins. Beads from India, porcelain from China, coins from Arabia, all found here, tucked into the soil. You hold a shard of Chinese celadon, its green glaze smooth under your fingers, and marvel at its journey. From kiln to port, from ship to dhow, from coast to caravan, all the way inland to this stone city on the savannah. Great Zimbabwe was no isolated kingdom. It was part of a global web. Gold and ivory flowed outward, luxuries flowed inward, and the city gleamed with wealth. You walk through the valley, past remains of smaller stone houses scattered across the land. Families lived here, herding cattle, growing millet, shaping pottery. Children played in the dust, women ground grain, men tended fires. Life was ordinary and extraordinary. Daily rhythms unfolding in the shadow of monumental stone. Still, uncertainty lingers. Who exactly ruled here? Was it a single dynasty or many? Was Great Zimbabwe capital of a centralized empire, or one city among many powerful sites? Scholars argue, digging deeper into the soil, but the answers remain incomplete. You pause beside an archaeologist's trench. the dirt piled high, and feel the weight of questions still unanswered. And then comes decline. By the 15th century, the city empties, its walls left to wind and birds. Why? Theories abound. Some say overgrazing stripped the land, cattle too numerous for the fragile soil. Others suggest shifts in trade routes, power moving north to new centers. Disease, drought, political collapse, all possibilities. You stand in the great enclosure, silence heavy, and feel the ache of a city abandoned. The stones remain, but the voices have gone. Night falls, and you stay within the walls. The stars blaze, the air cools, and the wind whispers through gaps in stone. You imagine the city alive again. Fires glowing in courtyards, drums echoing across the hills, laughter of children mixing with chants of priests. Great Zimbabwe still breathes, not in people but in memory, in the strength of stone that refuses to fall. The legacy endures beyond the ruins. Successor states rise farther north. Mutapa, known to Portuguese as Monomotapa, a kingdom rich with gold, trading with Europeans arriving on the coast. Stories reach Lisbon of a king so wealthy that rivers gleamed with gold dust. Exaggeration, perhaps, but rooted in truth. Africa's interior remained a source of treasures that outsiders hungered for. You picture Portuguese sailors at Sofala, eyes wide with greed, their hands tracing maps that stretched inland toward this house of stone. A quirky note. When Europeans first encountered Great Zimbabwe, some refused to believe Africans had built it. They concocted wild theories, Phoenicians, Arabs, even the lost tribes of Israel. They could not imagine that African hands had stacked these stones, carved these birds, shaped this city. Today, those myths are discarded, but the arrogance lingers in memory. You stand within the walls and whisper to the stones, knowing full well who their builders were. Africans, ingenious and determined, whose names we may never know, but whose work endures. The wind rises, and the grasses rustle like whispers. You close your eyes, feeling the permanence of stone, the transience of life, the mystery of history. Great Zimbabwe stands as a monument, not just to one city, but to the creativity of Africa, to the kingdoms that flourished unseen by most of the world, yet rivaled any in splendor. You descend from the walls, the savanna stretching endless before you. Tomorrow, your path will lead into forests thick with drums and bronze, into kingdoms where art gleams like gold and thrones are carved from legend. But for now, you rest against the stone, the stars wheeling above, the earth cool beneath your palms. Great Zimbabwe hums around you, silent yet eternal, its song carried in stone and shadow. The stone walls of Great Zimbabwe fade into the dawn mist, their granite still humming in your memory. But now the air grows heavy with green. You move westward into the forests, where the canopy rises high overhead and sunlight filters down in shifting shafts. The air smells of damp earth and smoke, of resin and roasted yams. Drums echo faintly in the distance, steady as a heartbeat, pulling you into a new rhythm. You are entering the forest kingdoms, where art gleams in bronze and ivory, and kings sit upon thrones both sacred and mysterious. The first city you reach is Ife, deep in the Yoruba lands. At first glance, it seems ordinary. Huts with thatched roofs, courtyards shaded by trees, smoke curling from hearths. But then you step into the palace, and the air changes. Before you, resting on a low dais, is a head sculpted in bronze. The detail takes your breath away. Every line of the face, every fold of the lips, every curve of the nose is rendered with perfection, so lifelike you half expect it to breathe. The surface gleams softly in lamplight, a quiet glow of mastery. Historians once doubted these could be African creations. They looked too refined, too perfect, too classical to fit the prejudices of outsiders. Early Europeans invented stories that the art must have been made by lost Greeks or survivors of Atlantis. But the truth is here, undeniable. Yoruba artisans cast these bronzes with brilliance centuries before the Renaissance, using techniques of lost wax casting so advanced they rivaled any in the world. You touch the bronze gently, and it is cool, unyielding, and full of memory. Uni, the king of Ife, is said to be divine. Descended from Oduduwa, the culture hero who first brought order to the world. The Yoruba believe the earth began here, at Ife, when Oduduwa descended from the heavens and spread soil upon the waters. You wander through the sacred grove, where shrines nestle under trees, their walls daubed with offerings of palm oil, kola nuts, and feathers. The forest hums with devotion, and you feel the nearness of gods. Farther south and east, in the Benin Kingdom, the air grows heavier still with artistry. You enter the court of the Oba, the king, whose power radiates in bronze and ivory. The walls of the palace are adorned with plaques, hundreds of them, each one cast in bronze, each one telling a story. You lean closer and see processions of warriors, hunters with spears, courtiers kneeling before the Oba. The details are exquisite. Armor etched, muscles tense, expressions alive. The plaques do more than decorate. They record, they declare, they immortalize. The Oba himself sits on a throne carved of ivory, surrounded by attendants. His regalia glitters. Coral beads wound thick around his neck, copper bracelets shining on his arms. At his feet lie carved tusks, spiraling with scenes of battles and rituals. When he speaks, the court falls silent, every eye fixed on him. You sense the aura of kingship, not only political, but spiritual. The Oba is believed to mediate between the living and the ancestors. His body itself sacred. Quirky details catch your attention. In Benin, giant earthworks, moats and walls, once stretched for thousands of kilometers, encircling towns and villages. Some archaeologists claim they were longer, collectively, than the Great Wall of China. You stand on one of these embankments, grass growing over the mounds, and imagine the thousands of hands that built them. The rhythm of spades cutting into earth. The determination of a people shaping their land. Art continues to astonish. You hold an ivory mask, its surface smooth and white, carved with a face serene and regal. Around the forehead are small carvings of Portuguese sailors, their beards and hats detailed with precision. The irony is striking. The mask honors a queen mother of Benin, yet it includes foreigners as symbols of wealth and power. The world was already connected here, already shaping art and identity. Historians debate the extent of these connections. Did Benin's artists work entirely from imagination? Or did they observe Portuguese men firsthand in the 15th century? Were these plaques intended as chronicles, or as ritual symbols beyond literal history? The uncertainty lingers, but the art itself needs no defense. It radiates genius, rooted deeply in African soil. You move farther west, into the lands of the Ashanti. Here, gold gleams everywhere, in jewelry, in weapons, in stools carved from a single block of wood. The golden stool itself is sacred, believed to contain the soul of the Ashanti people. It is not meant to be sat upon, but revered, a symbol of unity and spirit. You watch as priests carry it into court, wrapped in white cloth, laid gently upon a platform. Every eye boos before it, for to disrespect the stool is to strike at the heart of the kingdom. The Ashanti kings rule from Kumasi, their court filled with drums, dancers, and chiefs arrayed in kente cloth, its colors bright and geometric. You sit among them as the talking drums echo messages across the air. their rhythms imitating human speech. The court is alive with ceremony, but also with memory. Every stool, every symbol, every gesture tied to the ancestors. You realize that kingship here is not only about rule, but about continuity, weaving past and present into one unbroken fabric. A quirky moment stays with you. Some Ashanti kings were weighed each year against gold dust, a symbolic ritual to measure the wealth of the state. Was it literal or metaphorical? Scholars argue, but the image is unforgettable. A ruler standing on scales, his weight matched by gleaming gold. Beyond these great kingdoms, you wander into smaller polities. Yoruba city-states, Igbo towns, forest communities, all with their own rhythms of life. Farmers clear land with iron hoes, women weave cloth on looms, markets buzz with laughter and haggling. The forests are full of sound, drums, bells, voices lifted in call and response. Night falls in the forest, and you sit by a fire in a village square. Children gather close, wide-eyed, as a griot begins to tell stories of trickster tortoises, cunning spiders, and clever hunters. The tales roll out in rhythm, full of lessons, laughter, and warning. You smile, realizing these stories survive even now, carried in folklore across continents. The forest kingdoms shine not only in art, but in resilience. They thrived in dense, humid lands where stone walls were impractical, where power was measured not by pyramids or mosques, but by memory, ritual, and creativity. Their legacy lingers in bronze plaques, golden stools, ivory carvings, objects that glimmer across centuries, whispering stories of greatness too often overlooked. You close your eyes, the forest still humming with drums. The air is thick with smoke and spice. Your ears echo with rhythm, your mind dazzled by bronze and gold. You know the journey will continue, into pilgrimages of faith, into the thunder of armies, into encounters that reshape the world. But tonight, under the canopy of trees, you let the forest lull you to rest, its stories lingering in the cool breath of evening. The forest drums linger in your ears as dawn approaches. And when you open your eyes again, you find yourself on a long road. Dust rises beneath your feet, camels sway in the distance, and pilgrims in white robes chant softly as they walk. The air carries the scent of dates and frankincense, of sweat and determination. You are joining a journey that has reshaped Africa time and again. The journeys of faith and pilgrimage. Faith is not new here. You have seen it in the temples of Nubia, in the churches carved into Ethiopian rock, in the sacred groves of the Yoruba. But now faith stretches beyond kingdoms, linking Africa with distant worlds through Islam and Christianity. Caravans march northward to Mecca. Monks sing in stone churches, and rulers use devotion as both spiritual practice and political power. You fall in step with a caravan bound for Mecca. The leader is none other than Mansa Musa, the king of Mali, whose pilgrimage in 1324 will echo across centuries. His entourage dazzles the desert, thousands of men, servants, and soldiers, hundreds of camels loaded with gold dust. The sun glints from golden ornaments, the air hums with chants, and the ground trembles with footsteps. You hear merchants gasp in Cairo when the caravan arrives, gold spilling into markets, prices crashing under its abundance. Mansa Musa is remembered not only as a king, but as the richest man who ever lived. And yet, he bows humbly in prayer, his forehead pressed to the ground. Wealth and faith intertwine here, each amplifying the other. But not all journeys glitter. You join a small group of scholars traveling the same road, their bundles of manuscripts tucked under their arms. They pause to discuss law, astronomy, or poetry, even as they rest beneath acacia trees. Their pilgrimage is not only to Mecca, but to knowledge, to join a greater conversation across the Islamic world. Timbuktu, Kano, and Cairo are linked by these journeys, each scholar carrying both ideas and devotion across continents. In Ethiopia, the road is different. You climb steep paths into the highlands, where churches cling to cliffs and monks walk barefoot along narrow trails. The air is thin, the silence deep, broken only by the rustle of prayer books and the soft murmur of chants in Ge'ez. You step into a church carved into living rock, its walls glowing orange in candlelight. The floor is cool beneath your feet, the air heavy with incense, and the voices of monks rise like mist. Here, Christianity flourishes, rooted in ancient traditions, claiming to hold the Ark of the Covenant itself. Pilgrims come from villages scattered across the highlands, their staffs tapping against the stone as they climb. Quirky traditions emerge. In Lalibela, at certain festivals, priests carry crosses carved from gold and silver, their surfaces worn smooth by countless hands kissing them in reverence. In Aksum, pilgrims circle the chapel where the Ark is said to rest, though none may see it. Is it truly there? Scholars doubt, but the story persists, stronger than fact. You watch as men and women press their foreheads to the chapel wall, tears glistening in their eyes, and you realize that belief itself is the treasure. Islam and Christianity are not alone. Across Africa, traditional faiths continue, often blending with the new. You walk into a village in the Sahel, where elders gather under a baobab tree. Before them sits a calabash filled with water, its surface sprinkled with herbs. They cast cowrie shells, watching how they fall, reading messages from ancestors. These rituals exist alongside the mosque that stands nearby, and no one sees contradiction. The world of the unseen is vast, and faith is a tapestry woven from many threads. You pause in Kano, where the great mosque rises beside dye pits bubbling with indigo. Traders bustle, scholars debate, and pilgrims prepare for the long journey north. Horses are decorated with leather bridles studded with brass, their riders proud. You step into a courtyard where a Qadi delivers judgment, his voice steady as he quotes both Quran and local custom. The fusion of law and faith is seamless, each reinforcing the other. Faith moves not only through prayer, but through architecture. You stand in the great mosque of Jenny, its mud walls towering like a fortress, its wooden beams jutting out like a ladder into the sky. Each year, the community gathers to replaster the walls with fresh mud, a ritual as much social as spiritual. Children splash in pools of mud. Women carry water. Men climb ladders with baskets of clay. Laughter and prayer mingle, the building itself renewed by the hands of the faithful. Christian journeys move south as well. Along the Nile, you see Nubian kingdoms building churches, their walls painted with saints in bright robes, their arches echoing Byzantine influence, yet uniquely African. Farther south still, in the Congo, missionaries arrive centuries later, blending crosses with local symbols, kings adopting Christianity to link themselves with global power. The faith spreads not evenly, but in patches, each place making it its own. The road carries you eastward again, to the Swahili coast. Here, mosques rise beside coral stone houses, their minarets guiding sailors as much as calling the faithful. You sit in a courtyard in Kilwa, listening to the Friday prayer echo against the ocean breeze. Merchants bow shoulder to shoulder, their voices rising in unison. Faith here travels not only with caravans, but with sails, crossing the sea with monsoon winds. Scholarly uncertainty lingers around many of these journeys. How exactly did Islam spread into the interior? Was it through conquest, trade, or the quiet work of Sufi teachers? Why did some rulers adopt Christianity wholeheartedly, while others wove it into older beliefs. The records are fragmentary, the answers debated. But as you walk these roads, you see the evidence in stone, in ritual, in the devotion of countless footsteps. At night, you rest in a caravanserai, a roadside inn where pilgrims and traders share food and stories. The air smells of lentils simmering in clay pots, of flatbread baking on hot stones. You lie back, listening to voices around you, tales of distant lands, of visions and miracles, of debates over law and scripture. Some pilgrims snore, others murmur prayers, a few scribble notes by firelight. The road hums with humanity, all drawn forward by faith. You close your eyes, the flicker of candles still warm on your eyelids, the scent of incense clinging to your clothes. These journeys of faith will shape kingdoms and cultures, weaving Africa ever deeper into the fabric of the world. For now, you simply breathe, soothed by the rhythm of footsteps and the steady murmur of prayer, knowing the road will carry you next into encounters with explorers who will see Africa with both wonder and misunderstanding. The road of pilgrims fades into silence, and as you blink the candlelight away, you hear another kind of voice. A traveler's pen scratching, a sailor's astonished whisper, an outsider's first impressions of Africa. You are stepping into the age of encounters, when explorers, scholars, and merchants from distant worlds describe what they see, sometimes with awe, sometimes with ignorance, often with exaggeration. Their words will shape how the wider world thinks of Africa, even if they only grasp fragments of the truth. The first voice you hear belongs to Ibn Battuta, the Moroccan traveler whose journeys spanned more than 70,000 miles in the 14th century. He arrives in Mali, astonished at the wealth and order of Mansa Suleiman's court. You sit beside him in the audience hall, where the king sits surrounded by courtiers, drummers, and guards. Ibn Battuta writes of justice here, of people who leave goods in markets unattended without fear of theft. Yet he also frowns at customs he does not understand. Women moving freely, unveiled, speaking openly. To him it seems strange. To the people here, it is ordinary. You watch him scribble in his notebook, his judgments coloring his observations, and you realize how perception itself becomes history. Later, you stand beside Leo Africanus, born Al-Hassan ibn Muhammad al-Wazan, a traveler from Granada captured by pirates and brought to Rome, where he wrote Description of Africa in the 16th century. His words shaped European understanding for centuries, blending truth with embellishment. You imagine him describing Timbuktu's wealth, its scholars, its markets filled with salt and gold. Europeans read his accounts with wide eyes, dreaming of treasures across the desert. Yet he too admitted uncertainty, retelling stories he had only heard, mixing memory with rumor. You see how Africa's image was built not only on lived experience, but on echoes. Then the Portuguese arrive. You stand on the deck of Vasco da Gama's ship in 1498, the salty wind whipping your face as cannons boom against the coral walls of Mombasa. Sailors shout, sails strain, and smoke rises as another Swahili town is subdued. The Portuguese are astonished at what they find. Stone cities, bustling markets, rulers in silk. Yet in their journals they often describe them as curiosities, unfamiliar rather than equal. You watch as they build Fort Jesus in Mombasa, its walls thick, its bastions aimed outward. Their presence reshapes the coast, sometimes violently, sometimes subtly, always with consequence. But encounters are not all conquest. In Benin, Portuguese traders stand in awe of the Oba's court. You are there, watching as gifts are exchanged. Coral beads, brass, and ivory carvings for European cloth and firearms. The Portuguese marvel at the bronzes, noting their skill, yet they interpret them through their own biases. Some call the artistry European-like, refusing to believe such genius could be African. You hear their words, and you feel the sting of dismissal. Yet the bronzes themselves shine in defiance, silent witnesses to truth. Farther inland, travelers describe kingdoms with wonder. The Congo Kingdom greets the Portuguese with diplomacy. Kings exchanging letters with European monarchs, even adopting Christianity. You imagine Nzinga on Nkuwu, later Juan the Fern of Congo, standing beside priests, his people watching as crosses rise beside traditional shrines. A blend of worlds unfolds, complex and shifting, neither fully foreign nor fully familiar. Scholars debate the depth of this conversion. Was it sincere devotion or political strategy? The answer lies somewhere between. But the image of kings writing to the Pope, their letters still preserved, is undeniable. Quirky stories surface in these encounters. One Portuguese writer insisted he saw a giraffe for the first time in East Africa and thought it was a kind of camel leopard, hence the word Giraffa camelopardalis. Another described hippos as monsters that attacked boats, exaggerating their size into near myth. You smile at the blend of fact and wonder, at how animals became legends in foreign eyes. The encounters also reveal misunderstanding. Some travelers describe African markets as chaotic, yet when you step into them, you see order. Cloth laid in neat rows, baskets of millet stacked with care, weights and measures enforced by overseers. Others claim Africans lack writing, ignoring manuscripts stacked in Timbuktu, scripts etched in Ge'ez, Meroitic, and Arabic. The selective vision of outsiders shapes their reports more than the reality they saw. And yet, there is genuine awe too. You walk beside Duarte Barbosa, a Portuguese chronicler in the early 1500s, who marvels at Kilwa's coral palaces, its courts glittering with wealth. His pen races to describe what he sees, knowing his readers back in Lisbon will hardly believe it. You sense his sincerity, even if tinged with the perspective of a man who sees Africa as distant and exotic. Historians still debate the reliability of these accounts. Were Ibn Battuta's glowing descriptions of Mali exaggerated, shaped to impress readers back home? Did Leo Africanus embellish his tales under pressure in Rome? Were Portuguese writers honest chroniclers or propagandists for empire? The answers blur. Yet what remains clear is the impact. These stories crafted Africa's image in distant lands, often flattening its complexity into caricature, but always hinting at the grandeur within. At night, you sit with a group of sailors on the Swahili coast. They swap tales under starlight, their voices rising with laughter and fear. One claims to have seen spirits dancing on the waves. Another insists he heard drums from an island no one could find. The Indian Ocean hums with stories, half-truths drifting like sails in the dark. You smile, recognizing the same impulse you've seen in griots and pilgrims, to make meaning from mystery. The encounters are not yet the full storms of later centuries, but they are beginnings. First impressions, first exchanges, first misunderstandings. You feel the weight of curiosity, the tension of unequal power, the sparks of connection. Africa is no longer only a world unto itself. It is mirrored now in the eyes of strangers, reflected, refracted, sometimes distorted. You lie back on the deck of a ship, the wood creaking beneath you, the stars sharp above. You hear waves slap the hull, gulls cry faintly, and the whisper of sailors' stories mingling with the hum of the ocean. The world is growing wider, more entangled, and Africa's story will be told now not only by its own voices, but through the pens of those who arrive from beyond. You close your eyes, rocked gently by the sea, and let the murmur of waves lull you. These early encounters fade into dream, carrying you toward horizons where migrations, roads, and great movements will carve the continent into even more intricate patterns. The sea's rocking fades, and when you open your eyes again, you are no longer on a ship. You are standing on a wide road, packed hard by countless feet, wagon wheels, and hoofbeats. Dust rises into the morning sun, shimmering like a veil, and the air hums with the sound of voices. Merchants bargaining, herders shouting to their cattle, children laughing as they chase one another beside caravans. You are walking into Africa's age of great movements, where roads, rivers, and migrations stitch the continent together, binding kingdoms and people into networks that breathe with life. The Niger River is the first path you follow, its waters curling like a serpent across the land. Along its banks lie bustling markets, canoes loaded with grain, fishermen hauling nets heavy with silver fish, women pounding millet in rhythmic unison. The river is more than water. It is a road carrying people, goods, and ideas from one town to the next. You drift in a canoe carved from a single tree trunk, the paddle dipping quietly, and hear conversations as boats pass. News from Gao, stories from Timbuktu, rumors of distant kings. The river murmurs with continuity, its current stronger than any army, linking all who dwell along it. Farther east, you follow the Nile, the world's longest river, whose pulse you have already felt in Egypt and Nubia. But now you walk farther south, into the kingdoms along its upper reaches. Merchants here carry ivory, hides, and iron, while camel caravans approach from the Red Sea. You sit at a market stall in Sennar, listening to traders haggle in Arabic, Nubian, and other tongues, their voices weaving together like threads. Each word is a stitch in the tapestry of Africa's movements. The Sahara, though vast and unforgiving, becomes another great road. Caravans march across its dunes, their camels swaying like ships on waves. You join them again, the sun searing, the sand crunching beneath hooves. Salt blocks from Tao Deni gleam white. Gold dust shimmers in leather pouches. Books wrapped in goatskin ride carefully on backs. At night, you lie under stars, sharp as diamonds, the constellations guiding the way as they have for millennia. You realize the desert, once thought of as barrier, is in truth a bridge, an ocean of sand crisscrossed by invisible highways. Southward, you encounter other migrations, carried not by traders, but by entire peoples. You walk with the Bantu, their movements unfolding over centuries, starting around 1000 BCE and continuing far into the first millennium CE. Step by step, generation by generation, they spread from West Africa, carrying with them ironworking, farming, and language. You stop at a forge where sparks leap into the night as smiths hammer iron tools. These are the gifts of the Bantu. Metal hoes to till the soil, spears hardened by fire, words and grammar that echo across half a continent. Even today, Kiswahili, Zulu, Shona, and hundreds of others carry their legacy in syllables and sounds. You walk with a family of Bantu migrants. They carry baskets of yams, their goats bleating as they move into new lands. Children cling to mothers' skirts, wide-eyed at forests unfamiliar, rivers yet uncrossed. They stop, plant fields, build villages, then move again, their descendants pressing farther still. The rhythm is slow, but the transformation immense. Entire regions reshaped, new kingdoms seeded, languages blossoming like flowers from a single root. Quirky details surface. Some stories suggest the Bantu carried bananas and plantains from Asia, introduced through Indian Ocean trade, planting them in African soil until they became staples. Whether brought directly or through intermediaries, the banana's arrival reshaped diets, providing sustenance that fueled population growth. You peel one, sweet and soft on your tongue, marveling at how a single fruit can ripple through history. Roads are not only physical, They are spiritual too. You follow Sufi teachers across the Sahel, their songs of devotion carried on the wind. Villages gather to hear them chant, their voices weaving Islam into local rhythms, blending prayer with drumming. Faith moves with these journeys, subtle yet enduring, transforming landscapes not with armies, but with words and music. Trade routes link forest to desert, coast to interior. You find yourself in Kano again, its dye pits bubbling with indigo, cloth spread to dry in vivid blue sheets. Merchants carry this cloth northward, exchanging it for salt and books. Ivory tusks from the forests travel to the Swahili coast, where they are carved and shipped to Arabia and India. Copper flows south, gold flows north, and everywhere the hum of exchange pulses. You walk through markets so crowded you can hardly move. The smell of spices sharp in the air, the chatter of tongues overwhelming, yet somehow ordered. Scholars still debate the full extent of these movements. How far did the Bantu migration spread before contact with other peoples reshaped their path? How deeply did caravans penetrate the Sahara before the rise of major empires? How many manuscripts, how many stories, how many innovations have been lost to sand, water, and time? The uncertainty lingers, like a half-finished map with blank spaces waiting to be filled. You move south again, this time along the Limpopo River, watching as traders carry gold and ivory from inland mines to coastal ports. From here, the goods sail northward, linking Zimbabwe, Sofala, and Kilwa to Arabia and India. Inland roads, coastal sails, desert caravans, all meet in a web of motion. Africa breathes with movement, its roads invisible yet undeniable. And roads also carry people themselves, not just their goods. You hear stories of migrations sparked by drought, by war, by opportunity. Kingdoms rise as migrants settle fertile lands and fall when pressure forces them onward again. You see families uprooted, chiefs leading followers into new valleys, prayers whispered to ancestors to bless the journey. Each migration is a thread, weaving complexity into the fabric of history. Night falls on one of these roads. You sit by a fire, surrounded by traders, herders, pilgrims, and wanderers. The air smells of roasted millet. The laughter of strangers mingles with the soft plucking of a kora. Stories flow as freely as wine, tales of cities never seen, of lakes larger than seas, of kings so wealthy their palaces shine like the sun. Some are true, some exaggerated, some imagined, but all are carried forward by the road. You lean back, the stars overhead once more your companions. Africa's great movements have no single center, no single path. They are many, weaving rivers, deserts, forests, and coasts into one living tapestry. You close your eyes, soothed by the murmur of voices, the crackle of fire, the memory of footsteps pressing dust into roads that stretch endlessly into the horizon. Tomorrow, those roads will carry you to the present's edge, into echoes where the past lingers still, shaping music, memory, and identity. But tonight, you rest on the road itself, letting its rhythm lull you into dreams. The fire dies down to glowing embers, and as you stir in the night, you feel the road give way beneath you. The dust and stones dissolve into something softer, soil rich with memory, soil that has carried countless generations and still hums with their echoes. You are stepping into the present dawn, where Africa's history is no longer only about empires and caravans, pyramids and palaces, but about the continuity of people whose songs, stories, and rhythms still carry the past into today. The first sound you hear is music, a drum, low and steady, like a heartbeat. Then another, higher, sharper, calling back in response. Voices join, weaving harmonies that rise like smoke. You are in a village square, children clapping in rhythm, elders swaying with quiet dignity, the air alive with song. These are not merely performances. They are inheritances. Every beat carries memory of kingdoms, of migrations, of ancestors whose names linger in melody. You realize that Africa's history has never truly left. It lives in music, oral tradition, ritual, and art. You sit with a griot once more, this time an old man with eyes bright as stars. He plucks a kora, its strings shimmering in the night air, and he sings of Sundiata, of Mansa Musa, of battles and peace, of betrayals and triumphs. His words fold centuries into verses, making the past present, making kings and ancestors sit among the listeners as if alive. History, he says softly when he pauses, is not written in stone alone. It is written in our voices, in our memories. You nod, understanding that the Library of Africa is not only manuscripts and monuments, but the human voice itself. In Ethiopia, the chants of priests rise in Ge'ez, unbroken for over 1,000 years. You stand in a rock-hewn church as the incense curls upward, voices weaving in haunting tones that seem outside of time. A boy sways beside his grandfather, learning the rhythm, absorbing not just prayer, but continuity. Here, the echoes of Aksum still live. The faith of Izana still chanted. The legend of the Ark still whispered. Along the Swahili coast, you hear Kiswahili sung like poetry, the call to prayer blending with the crash of waves. Women in bright kangas barter in markets, their voices rising in laughter and debate. Coral houses, centuries old, still stand, their carved doors polished by generations of hands. You walk through Zanzibar's stone town, and the smell of cloves, cinnamon, and sea air fills your senses. The voices you hear carry centuries of blending. Bantu roots, Arabic poetry, Indian rhythms, all still alive, shaping identity. In West Africa, the Ashanti still honor the golden stool, not as a relic of the past, but as a living symbol. Drummers beat messages on talking drums, chiefs gather in colorful kente cloth, gold still gleams in ceremonies. Children listen to proverbs recited in markets, phrases compact yet heavy with meaning. Wisdom is like a baobab tree. No one person can embrace it. The wisdom of centuries lingers in words spoken daily. Quirky survivals appear too. In some villages, women still paint houses with geometric designs, echoing patterns centuries old. Fishermen in Mali carve boats in the same style their ancestors used on the Niger. In Nigeria, bronze casters still pour molten metal into molds, their hands repeating motions practiced by artisans of Ife and Benin. Continuity is everywhere, disguised as daily life. You move south into lands where the memory of Great Zimbabwe lingers in proverbs and stories, where soapstone birds now adorn a modern nation's flag. Children recite lessons under baobab shade, their chalkboards propped on roots, their voices steady. They are heirs to stone walls and golden trade, even if they do not always see it. The legacy of Africa's history reaches far beyond the continent. You hear it in jazz and blues, carried across oceans by enslaved people who turned sorrow into song. You hear it in drums that beat in Brazil, in dances in the Caribbean, in rhythms of hip-hop echoing across the world. The diaspora carries Africa's past outward, transforming it, yet never severing its roots. You realize that Africa's history is not contained by geography. It is global, resonating wherever its children live. Scholars still argue about many things. When exactly did the Bantu migrations begin? How centralized was Great Zimbabwe's authority? What secrets hide in Timbuktu's manuscripts, still locked away in family chests? The uncertainties remain, like shadows on the edges of firelight. Yet perhaps that is fitting. History is not only answers, it is also questions, invitations to imagine, to wonder, to listen. You sit once more by a fire, but this time the circle is vast. Around it sit griots and priests, traders and smiths, kings and queens, pilgrims and sailors, ancestors and children. Their voices overlap. Chants, songs, laughter, debates, forming a chorus that is not always harmonious, but always alive. The fire crackles. Sparks rise into the sky, and above them the stars burn as they always have, witnesses to every age. As the night deepens, you feel the weight of time settle gently, no longer heavy, but comforting. You realize that Africa's history is not a distant story locked in ruins or forgotten manuscripts. It is here, breathing in music, in words, in rituals, in the daily lives of millions. It is not past, it is present. The drums slow, the voices soften, the fire glows low. You close your eyes, soothed by the hum of continuity, by the warmth of memory that stretches from the first footsteps in the Rift Valley to the voices chanting in modern cities. The story is not finished. It never will be. It flows like the Nile, endless, steady, carrying the past into every new dawn. And now, it is time to let the story quiet itself. Soft wind down, approx 300 words. The fire flickers lower still, and the night air cools. You feel the weight of centuries pressing around you, not as burden, but as comfort, like a vast quilt stitched from countless lives. Africa's story has carried you from the earliest sparks of humanity to empires of gold and stone, from songs whispered in caves to chants echoing in mosques and churches, from caravans in the desert to dhows on the sea. It has carried you, step by step, across deserts, rivers, forests, and coasts, until you now rest in the gentle present. The sounds soften, the drums become distant, the chants fade to whispers, the bustle of markets drifts away like smoke. What remains is the steady pulse of continuity, the rhythm of humanity that has never ceased. You imagine the stars above, the same stars watched by hunters on the savannah, by sailors on the ocean, by griots in the square. Their light is soft now, guiding you not across roads or rivers, but into rest. You breathe slowly, deeply, the air cool, the night vast. Each exhale releases the weight of empires, the echo of migrations, the questions of scholars. Each inhale draws in peace, memory, and a quiet gratitude for the resilience of those who lived before. The fire dwindles to embers, glowing faintly, then dimming. The voices hush, the drums stop. The night grows still. Africa's story lingers, but softly now, a lullaby hummed by history itself. You let it carry you, gently, into silence, into sleep.